Listener discretion is advised.
Everything's fine. All right, you are listening to Wine and Crime, the podcast where three friends chug wine, chat true crime, and unleash their worst Minnesotan accents.
Oh, yeah. That reminds me, I should get my wine out of the fridge.
And Lucy gets assaulted by her cat's giant floofy tail.
Yeah.
It's only assault if it's not consensual.
That's true. Yeah. I'm Kenyon.
I'm Lucy, and I'm fine.
I'm Amanda! Also fine. Everything's fine.
She had to get her wine out of her adorable pink mini fridge.
It's
in
so
her office.
cute.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, this week we have a very special gals pick for you. And it is very special because essentially we...
Tell them what you did.
Tell them what you did.
We had a fan pick for costume crimes, which is still going to happen. But...
Well, this comes out after it's already happened.
Okay, good. So...
We did it for our live show.
That's right. Which hasn't happened in life yet, but has happened for listeners at this point. Got it. Okay, time. So... We had a fan pick for costume crimes. And I had planned out my case for that. And it was very dark. Mm-hmm. And then we decided, we should do costume crimes for our live stream because it's Halloween and costumes.
Totes.
And my case would not work for a live show.
We try not to do the really dark Kenyan cases for live shows because it's
try.
a lot.
She tries.
It's tough. So, but I'd already written it. So I didn't want that work to go to waste. So we created a topic roughly around the case that I had already written. Very roughly. Roughly.
The goose is loose.
And so that topic is punk is dead crimes.
Or is it?
Yeah. Oh.
It's morphed.
It has morphed.
And even with this couture topic, my case still barely fits.
Oh, always.
So it's perfect.
It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Tons of sense.
So speaking of, Amanda, what is our wine crime pairing for Punk is Dead crimes?
Oh, well, okay. So after I featured Anarchist Wine Co. in a previous episode, the wonderful people over there actually sent me a gift in the mail of a bunch of wines.
I got them too.
Like, so lovely and amazing. And first of all, what better pairing than Anarchist Wine Co. with Punk is Dead crimes?
Yeah.
So I immediately went to that little box that I had set aside and pulled out the 15 Minutes of Fame sparkling rosé.
Oh, I like that.
The label
That's
is
perfect.
gorgeous.
And that color is beautiful on that rosé.
Stunning. Like, I want to make a candle out of this bottle. This is a 2020 rosé. It is a blend of 79% Mourvèdre and 21% Tempranillo.
Ooh,
which I don't think
what
I
a cool
have.
combo.
I don't think I've ever had a blend like this in my life. We've got a touch of France. We've got a touch of España. I cannot wait.
And
I'm so
it's
excited.
sparkling. Yeah.
A touch of El
sparkling.
Nino.
A touch of El Nino. What are we doing for El Nino? This says a pink cacophony as it's poured. This chic, frisant rosé delights the senses. Dazzling aromas tickle the nose with passion fruit, wild jasmine, and kiwi. A lively palate dances with juicy papaya, freshly picked pineapple, and tart cherry, while soft bubbles play on a creamy texture. Fresh acidity carries through to a tantalizing finish.
Wow, that is one of the more descriptive wine descriptions I think we've ever had.
It's stunning.
It sounds very punk.
I'm obsessed, and I'm super excited about it. She's 13.5% ABV. She's kind of like a crack, I'd say. If you're watching from home, you can see that it has sort of like a beer bottle cap over the top, which I think is always kind of a fun detail on sparkling wine. So we're going to call that a crack.
Okay.
And you can open that.
It's a crop.
It's a crop. You can open that with this little like hooked portion of your nice pop wine key. All right. I'm going to affix my microphone right in front of this blessed mouth.
Oh, I like your dark nails.
Thank you. They're black. Here we go.
Oh,
we're fine. There she is. Nice hiss.
Nice hiss.
Nice hiss. Oh, she's
Wow.
starting. She's
third
starting to
time's the
bubble.
crack. That color is just really pretty.
I am.
It's not like too pink, you know?
It matches Amanda's whole office.
It really does. Oh,
yeah. Nice.
Look at the bubs coming up.
Well,
Yum.
I am jealous. I am drinking a sparkling water
Ooh, yum.
because we attended a friend's wedding this past weekend and I may never drink again.
Still hungover.
I am still slightly hungover and just not gonna chase that dragon again for a while.
Good for you.
But it was fun.
I've got some Kim Crawford Sauvignon Blanc on deck.
Nice. Classic.
I'm trying to
She's
introduce
good.
you to a special guest that I brought today.
Oh. Amanda's digging around under her desk, if you're curious. And we were worried that she had gotten a new pet and that it was a snake, but she says no.
It depends on how you qualify pet.
Oh, no.
It's taxidermy.
Is it a Tamagotchi?
Because
Is
you
it
could
a
say that she's a pet. Hold on. It might take a moment. This is really good audio content. This is why you need to be following us on Patreon.
Yeah,
For $1
for these
or
videos.
more, you get video episodes and you can see exactly what I'm referring to.
Why is it taking so long?
She's-
Snakes are usually faster than this.
Oh, she's stuck. She's stuck.
What's happening?
It's a Roomba.
No.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
what is
my
that?
Hello, here comes the
Hello,
boy.
Oh,
Hello,
my
boy.
God. It's an inflatable light up ghost.
I'm
like
really
Halloween
excited
decoration.
about Halloween.
I know. I'm excited about Halloween, too.
Okay, don't squeeze her too hard because her motor will give out.
So you turned on the motor and it inflated? That's what was happening?
Hey,
Oh, yeah.
Kind of slowly was...
I also have a cat, but I don't have enough outlet space to get her going.
I
right now.
hope that you blow a fuse inflating your
I won't because I'm using that giant backup
generator.
box that we have.
Oh, nice.
So suck on that, Kenyon. But she's going to be joining me today. Lucy, would you like to name her?
Is it for sure a femme?
She's reading female to me, but I get it mostly from her energy.
How about Garcelle? Go Garcelle the ghost.
Garcelle, I love.
I also just finished watching the latest episode of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
I'm behind.
fuck
I
yeah.
got to catch up before this weekend.
Kathy Hilton has some hits.
Kathy Hilton, are you okay?
I can answer that. No.
No.
Well, she's fucking rich, so she's fine.
Okay. Well, hello, Garcelle. Welcome to the crew. And Lucy, what is our background and maybe psych for Punk is Dead crimes?
No psych.
Ugh, fine.
Okay, so here's what my boyfriend Britannica, has to say. Punk, also called punk rock, is an aggressive form of rock music that coalesced into an international, though predominantly Anglo-American movement between 1975 and 1980, roughly. Often politicized and full of vital energy beneath a sarcastic, hostile facade, punk spread as an ideology and as an aesthetic approach, becoming an archetype of teen rebellion and alienation.
The movement is just 5 years?
Yeah, punk is dead, didn't you hear?
Well, I know, but that just seems so short. Don't you think? That surprises me.
It was a bright star that burnt out kind of quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love etymology and entomology.
Okay.
But here's some etymology. The word punk was first used around 1575. But at the time, its meaning what was kind of defined as a quote-unquote prostitute.
Sex worker, got
Sex worker. Other definitions over time have included a young, inexperienced person, usually a man, usually a blonde man.
Don't trust him.
Nonsense or foolishness. A preparation as of a stick of coated wood that burns slowly and is used to ignite fuses, especially of fireworks.
Weird, never heard of that. Cool.
Could be used to just say that something's inferior, something is of poor health. And of course, punk rock, a punk rock musician or someone who affects punk style.
My great-grandma, her family nickname instead of grandma or whatever was Punka.
Oh,
Don't know where it came from or
that's
why.
cute.
Sounds Norwegian.
It does.
So the leap from, I don't know, a sex worker into a music term happened around 1970 and probably stemmed from the slang definition of punk as a young man used as a sexual partner by another man in a prison.
Okay. Didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Interesting etymology.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So in the mid-1960s, there were some garage rock bands, the one that I recognized was Question Mark and the Mysterians.
Oh, I did not
96 Tears. 96 Tears. You've heard that song.
Oh.
Okay.
That's
I just
Question
never
Mark and
remember the
Mysterians.
name of anyone or anything.
That's
Yeah, me
okay.
either.
So these garage rock bands kind of blended with more hard rock, angsty sounds like those of the New York Dolls. By 1975, punk described the simple literary music scene around clubs like CBGB in New York City. In 1976, the Ramones released their first album, which, quote, became the blueprint for punk, guitar as white noise, drums as texture, and vocals as hostile slogans.
And just a lot of people who literally did not know how to play their instruments.
Yeah.
A few that did.
Well, the
Many
white noise.
that did not.
The white noise thing. That's not
It wasn't the
Melodic.
primary focus.
it wasn't polished. Yeah. Punk was a response to the pastoral hippie culture of the 1960s, concerned more with dirty urban anger. The term leapt over the pond to the UK, where the Sex Pistols emerged. And here's a fun fact that I believe we will be touching on in Kenyon's case. That band was assembled by a guy who owned a fetishist store in London that was just called Sex.
Love.
We will be getting to it.
That story alone is really bizarre and cool. So here's a little background of British punk, once again from my lover, ironically, Britannica, British punk. Announced by their manifesto, the single Anarchy in the UK, the Sex Pistols established punk as a national style that combined confrontational fashions with sped-up hard rock and elusive, socially aware lyrics that addressed the reduced expectations of 1970s teens. Armed with a critique of the music industry and consumerism, early British punk spawned a resurgence of interest in rock, mirroring social upheaval with a series of visionary songs couched in black humor. Groups such as the Buzzcocks, The Clash, and Susie and the Banshees scored hits in 1977, 1978. Anarchist, decentralizing, and libertarian, UK punk was drawn into the polarized politics of British society and by 1979 had self-destructed as a pop style.
Yeah. Very,
like I
very
said,
quick.
Burned bright.
Right. but an enduring legacy. I mean, I still listen to some of these bands.
Oh, the
Mainly
legacy.
just The Clash, if I'm being really honest.
The legacy
Because they're more
is,
melodic than the others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of legacy, though.
Yeah.
Post-punk groups such as Public Image Limited and Joy Division replaced punk's worldliness with inner concerns, matching rock with the technological rhythms of disco. A little bit more catchy, dare I say.
Palatable.
Yeah.
Harmonious.
Drink.
Not migraine-inducing.
Nevertheless, punk's influence could be seen throughout British society, notably in mass media shock tactics, the confrontational strategies of environmentalists, and the proliferation of independent record labels.
And collage art.
Collage art, absolutely.
Spiked belts.
We'll get to all of this.
Fashion.
In the U.S., the punk scene was big in Seattle, San Francisco, where the Dead Kennedys were from, and Los Angeles, where Black Flag was from. In the late 70s, though, disco was really taking over, and it kind of drove the punk scene underground, resulting in hardcore punk, which is what you guys are referring to, the super fast-paced, frenetic, blah, blah, blah. That's hardcore punk. That's not like the original punk.
Okay.
Hardcore punk flourished in the early to mid 80s. Nirvana showed up in 1991, bringing in the grunge scene, which was effectively Gen X's punk.
Right. It's punk music, but like more flannel and less leather.
More like mellow, kind
Yeah.
of.
Very Gen X.
Very Gen X.
Super Gen X.
Punk also heavily influenced 80s new wave and even synth pop. So like honestly, when I said punk was really just from like 1975 to 1980, that's like
That was like classic.
the pure
Pure punk.
the pure classic punk. That was an accident, but it worked. According to How Stuff Works, quote, Sid Vicious's death in 1979 is still often considered the day that punk died.
And we've covered Sid Vicious.
We covered him recently. What was
Yeah,
that
we
topic?
did. It was the like celebrity whatever crimes. Groupie crimes.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. For some, Green Day's ascension to the top of the pop charts with Dookie 15 years later was like the music industry kicking a dead dog, although
Okay, harsh.
That
love
album is
Green
amazing.
Day.
Yeah, love Green Day. Have you guys, like yesterday I saw a meme of somebody with a giant tattoo on their forearm, like their entire forearm, and it's just their Ticketmaster concert ticket to a Green Day concert in like 2009.
Oh, honey, no. I've got questionable tattoos.
2009?
I don't know.
That's
maybe
a little late.
2006. I don't know.
I mean, they're still
early
touring.
2000s. Yeah.
I've seen the Broadway show American Idiot. Okay.
Oh, nice. I
Actually
think
quite
I
good.
own all of Green Day's albums.
Their
love
whole
Green Day.
discography.
Right.
Amanda and I went to Green Day with Blink 182 in
We
concert
did.
at the Target Center. That was a fucking fantastic show.
Nice. And you got your tattoo covered up, or
Yeah. My
I did not understand the joke. I was like, what? Tattoo? Oh,
didn't
the
my
ticket.
dad
Got
come
it.
with us? Didn't he fully attend the concert with us?
I don't think so. I think he dropped us off and picked us up, but I don't think he was there unless I really blocked that out.
Well, he would have faded into the
he would have been
background.
quiet.
That was Operation Tiddlywinks.
Yep. We made shirts and everything. Go fucking figure.
Yeah, that sounds like us.
So punk, of course, is more than just music. When we think about punk as an aesthetic, we think of mohawks and studded leather jackets, chains, and eyeliner. Other fashion choices include Doc Martens boots, like combat boots,
I have
like
those.
military kind of boots also. Deliberately offensive t-shirts, yeah, check. Brightly colored hair, tattoos, probably done by your friend's friend at a party.
yeah,
Stick and
like
pokes.
unprofesh tattoos.
Stick and
Yeah.
pokes.
Yeah.
I still
get
need to get one that just
Tetanus
says,
tattoos.
I want to get one that just says, fuck you under my right tit as a stick and poke.
Is
So you
it
can
poke
just-
and stick?
Stick and poke.
So you can
Those
just
poke and stick.
lift up the tit.
To tell you all you need to know.
I found a mosquito bite mysteriously under my small boob this morning.
Oof, that's rough.
How'd it get in there?
I do not know. I don't want to think about it. And also like body modification.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of piercings. Clothing was also not as engendered and binary. So like dudes wore tight jeans, fishnets, skirts, and eyeliner. And then the gals maybe shaved their heads and wore men's shirts, jackets, and combat boots, for example. This specific genre of music and like culture was actually quite feminist. There were a lot of female punk musicians, and people generally respected the women in the scene. It was progressive. Punk subculture is largely characterized by anti-establishment views, the promotion of individual freedom, and DIY ethics. The punk ethos is primarily made up of beliefs such as nonconformity, anti-authoritarianism, anti-corporatism, anti-consumerist, anti-corporate greed, direct action, and not quote-unquote selling out. There are lots of zines. There's lots of satire. Philosophically speaking, music journalist John Savage describes the subculture as a, quote, bricolage, so like a collage kind of almost every...
That's all I could hear.
Bricolage. Of almost every previous youth culture in the Western world since World War II, quote, stuck together with safety pins.
Lots of safety pins.
I loved that description. Quote, the music and culture was generated by people on the margins, and being a punk became a badge of honor, says Mark Anderson, punk historian and author of We Are the Clash, Reagan, Thatcher, and the Last Stand of a Band That Mattered. It's a lot packed into that title.
Lots of well, yeah, it makes sense that they were so like political and disillusioned because they were like
Reagan.
Yeah,
Thatcher.
living through this long and overwhelming wave of like new conservatism that was basically just like fuck poor people.
It was a response for sure. Quote, it had some specific musical or fashion or hairstyle signifiers, but I think what is underneath all of that and what is really the substance is a challenging and creative spirit. Joey Ramone said in a 1976 Rolling Stone interview that his band formed around a mutual feeling of exile. I hate this part, especially in their romantic pursuit of women. Quote, they always wanted to go with the guys who had Corvettes, so we had nothing to do but climb on rooftops and sniff glue.
Okay. I never thought about punk music even being even remotely romantic or romantic related. It felt like a genre of music that like doesn't talk about romance that much.
I mean, this is just one quote from one musician, but I don't like this incel version of the birth of punk. But
yeah,
just a quote from Joey Ramone, it's got a little bit of weight. But
yeah, maybe they just meant like, you know, we felt like outsiders. We weren't the popular kids.
That's exactly what he said. But I think the way he said it was like, oh, can't get the hot girls, gonna go sniff glue and start a band. It's like, oh, okay.
Which is also probably true, but less appealing.
Yeah. So speaking of, it should be clarified that punk does not inherently endorse or support fascism or neo-Nazis. There's a lot of like fashion overlap, but I'll kind of get to it.
That's so odd.
Oh, it's the line is...
it's like the shaved heads, the combat boots. Basically,
because like the SLC punk thing where like some of the shaved head people were like neo-Nazis.
We kind of get into it in my case, like touch on it a little bit, but not a ton. But like Lucy mentioned a little bit earlier, a lot of like intentionally shocking or what did you say, offensive t-shirts, like swastikas were super prevalent in the punk scene, even though a lot of them considered themselves like anti-fascist.
It was just for shock value initially, but I think that opened the door for a lot of neo-Nazis into the scene. Anyway, I'll just read this next part. So this is from a 2018 GQ article. Every hardcore band you loved in the 80s and beyond, from Black Flag to Minutemen to Fugazi, had one unfortunate thing in common. Nazi skinheads occasionally stormed their concerts, stomped their fans, and gave Hitler salutes in lieu of applauding, and generally turned a communal experience into one full of hatred and conflict.
God.
Yeah, it's scary. And then they have like mosh pits too, and you're like,
Oh, we'll get to
In
shit
there
that
with-
went down in mosh pits.
okay. Or pogoing is how it started.
Ugh.
It started just like kind of throwing people sort of back and forth in like kind of a fun way, and then like punching came in.
Yeah, I like a safe mosh pit, a gentle mosh,
I don't know.
a
that
mosh
there's-
and nosh. I've been in a gentle mosh pit. It was really fun, but like a serious one, no thanks.
I saw our friend who was in like a hardcore screamo band when we were in college, and I went to one of his shows, and I was being supportive, and I was right up by the stage, and I got punched in the back and went home.
Yeah, I was at like a ska concert with a friend, and we were in a mosh pit, and it was really fun.
That is a
With
gentle
your
mosh.
Yeah, and I was
No.
also like 16, so
No mosh.
The last time
No
she
mosh.
moved.
15 maybe.
Okay, so punk rockers had flirted with fascist imagery for shock value, like Amanda just said, with the Sex Pistols, Sid Vicious, and Susie Sue wearing swastikas in public. But as early San Francisco scenester Howie Klein, later president of Reprise Records,
Probably Reprise
Records, recalls, suddenly you had people who were part of the scene who didn't understand that fascist is bad.
Yeah, they're literally actual fascists and actual Nazis would have killed and murdered anyone exhibiting any of these like punk tendencies of being anti-authoritarian and like non-conformist.
Yeah.
They
It
would
doesn't
have been
make sense.
murdered.
It's definitely an oxymoron for a lot of the
Like,
folks that were wearing
think.
that shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
It didn't fucking make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. I think they just saw bald heads and combat boots and were like, oh, well, okay, we'll get to it. By 1980, a more violent strain of punk fans was infecting punk shows. Pogoing became slam dancing, like I just said, now known as moshing, and some of them didn't, this is a quote, and some of them didn't seem like they were really there to enjoy the music as much as they were there to beat up on people, sometimes in a really chicken shit way, says Jello Biafra, whose band Dead Kennedys put on a classic song about it in 1981 called Nazi Punks Fuck Off.
I like that. That's clear.
Yep. By the mid-1980s, kids who wanted to play rock and roll to their friends found themselves in the position of having to put up with crowd wars between Nazis and anti-fascists. To make things especially confusing, both groups shaved their heads, and it was only through a complicated code of color-coordinated shoelaces that anyone could tell these two groups apart.
Like,
That's
who has
tough.
the time?
No.
Yeah.
And you can't do
stop
that in a mosh
wearing-
pit.
Yeah.
No, but
Just give up the fucking shock value swastika shit. Just
Yeah.
let that part go.
Yeah. Yeah. Enough with
it
the
was
swastikas.
well, they retired the swastikas obviously at this point, but it was still like the damage had been done. The Nazis were already there. You already had this subculture aesthetic. It's not as easy to be like, oh, we're not shaving our heads anymore, you know. So long story short, the vast majority of punks, both then and now, are anti-fascist. Despite this and its views on gender equality and the fact that punks tend to come from all economic classes, the scene is still overwhelmingly white. So it's complicated. I think the more I read about punk and like the history, how it formed, and then moreover how it maybe quote unquote died in like the early 80s when like disco happened and blah blah blah. They're just like new iterations for new generations. It's counterculture at the core.
Right.
So
Well, then-
every generation has its own counterculture sort of vibe. So
And then, like, for our generation and, like, when we were in middle school and stuff, it just became, like, very commercialized.
Green Day.
And and like what was the Warped Tour?
Yeah.
You know, and like
I'm still
Hot
pissed I never
Topic.
got to go. But
And all that shit.
we embraced that because that was our scene when we
that
were
was
young.
The way we had access to that stuff, and it was like safe, but it was very like commercialized. Capitalism had definitely taken over a lot of it. I'm sure real
It always
punk
does.
still existed, but like that wasn't our experience really.
Yeah. So anyway, that is my segment.
Wow.
There's a lot to unpack. This was a very interesting topic, if we do say so ourselves, because we fucking chose it.
Yeah.
So kudos to us.
Well done, us.
Yes.
We did it.
Okay, well, prepare to be super bummed out.
Always. I'm always prepared.
But also, if you purchase tickets to the live stream, just feel very lucky that this wasn't accidentally my case for that show.
I'm kind of sad about it. But yes.
You did a really dark case at a live show once, and there were a couple people who were actually upset about it.
It was an accident. It was a case. It was Nashville. And it was a case that after I had written like the first half of it, and our show was like the next day, I got to like the details of it and was like, oh my God, this
It's too late to go back.
So horrific.
You were in too deep.
I was in too deep. We were on tour. I didn't have time to start over. And yeah, it was bad. It was bad. Now I've learned. Okay, so and also I bet some people, especially our British listeners, will probably know about this case a little bit.
Yeah.
So Peter Samuel Cook was born on August 17th, 1928 in Cambridge, England.
Oh.
Which means
yes.
we've got some geography.
It's been so long since you've geographied.
I know. This one's really good, so I felt good about it. So Cambridge lies southwest of the inventively named twin villages of Land Beach and Water Beach,
Oh, wow.
west of Horningsea, and next trip on my bucket list, Stoke-cum-Cooey.
Okay. Stoke 'em.
Stoke-cum, C-U-M, Q-U-Y.
Clee.
Stoke-cum-Cooey.
Quay.
Stoke-cum-Quit. Come quit. I ain't got much time. Okay. Southeast of Lulworth and Lulworth, L-O-L Worth, and Bar Hill. It is a university town after all. And north of the unfortunate Trumpington.
Ooh,
And basically smack dab in between Hardwick and Lode.
Love it.
Load.
Ish.
That's too bad.
I want to move to Load.
Load. When you go past Stoke-cum-Quay, and you then
Take a
you're
left
on
in
your way to
Lode.
Lode.
Drop me off and Load.
So anyway, I hope you had fun, because that is the last part of this that's funny.
You'll never laugh again.
No.
So there's basically no information available about Cook's early life other than the fact that he began honing his criminal record at a very young age. His juvenile arrests led him to being sent to a series of what are called approved schools. So basically like boarding schools that children would be sent to by the courts. So it's kind of like a juvenile detention, but it's also it's like a boarding school, reform school thing. Either for committing criminal offenses or because they were deemed beyond parental control. So he would go to these places. Also, when he's growing up, it is the 40s and 50s, or how old is he? He's born in 28. So the 30s and 40s. So I'm
Okay.
sure that these schools were not warm, fuzzy places to be.
No, they're not
Probably
now.
not.
In a lot of places.
So I'm sure that didn't help his behavioral issues. And he always would escape from them. So he was really good at escaping.
Sneaking out.
Yeah. After he aged out of the approved schools, he continued to consistently be arrested for burglary and developed a reputation for his ability to escape from prison.
Okay.
When he was in his 20s, Cook was known as, quote, one of Britain's most wanted escapees. So they just could not keep him.
Creepy.
A story about him in the Cambridge News described how, quote, on one occasion after being sentenced to 5 years in jail, he was being held at Shire Hall in Cambridge, awaiting prison transport to Dartmoor, which is a famous prison, I think. And he managed to escape by squirming through a trap door in a ceiling.
Ooh.
Was he really skinny?
Didn't Ted Bundy do that, basically?
Agile. Yeah, Ted Bundy escaped from prison, yeah.
Couple times.
Yeah. One of his escapes, I think, was through a ceiling.
Yeah, it was.
He actually has a lot of similarities to later Ted Bundy in the escaping and then his crimes and the frenetic pace of his crimes.
Ooh.
Okay.
When he got a job as a scaffolder, workmates nicknamed him the human fly because of his agility. So he could just Spider-Man up scaffolding and shit.
Ugh.
Really gross.
Scuttle.
Yeah. While on the run from Shire, this is all still a long quote. While on the run from Shire Hall, he wrote a letter to the News, the Cambridge News, boasting that he had been back in Cambridge while police were searching for him and bragging, quote, I am not worried now. Police, people, courts, nothing worries me now.
Okay.
Because he's like, well, whatever. If they
Nothing
catch
can hold me.
I can just escape again.
Yeah, he's getting cocky.
Mm-hmm. When he was not in prison, he worked sporadically, like I said, with scaffolding or construction. But then more commonly, he worked as a delivery driver and handyman. And it's likely that he chose these jobs specifically because they provided opportunities for him to case houses that he could then burgle.
Clever and terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Also a bit of a BTK.
Yeah. Vibe.
Whiff. Right there.
Whiff.
Oh, whiff of Dennis Rader.
Whiff of BTK.
Whisper of BTK.
Just a whisper. A careless whisper.
Our fragrance line will be out in 2024.
Oh my God. Whisper of BTK.
I'm kidding. That's so gross.
Better than a whisper of what's the Night Stalker, the stinky one.
Oh, God.
Ramirez.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Smells like a goat.
Oh, sir.
Okay. So then on October 18th, 1974, Cook committed what is known to be his first rape, although I feel like there's just no way this is his actual first. This is the first known. First known, I think, because the pace was so frenetic after this that to me it feels like he must have already
escalated.
Mm-hmm.
He would later say he had broken into the house intending only to rob it as usual, but that when he had encountered a young woman at home, he decided to rape her. So he claims it was opportunistic.
Mm-hmm.
It probably wasn't, and we will get to it. So this first victim was a 20-year-old student who was at home in her bedroom on Springfield Road in Cambridge. I'm not going to get into a lot of details about the victims, I think because at the time, a lot of them didn't want they didn't want their identities to be known because most survived. So after this first attack, several more rapes followed in quick succession. Many of these rapes had elements in common. So Cook's MO was utterly bone-chilling. He would break in, immediately cut the power to the home.
Oh.
And then wake his victim with a bright flashlight, shining in their face.
Didn't the Golden State Killer do that
the
too?
Same thing.
Yeah, that's fucked up. Mm-hmm. He would cut telephone lines and shit too. I don't know about power, but fuck. No.
And then subdue the victim with ether.
Ugh.
so that they weren't like physically fighting back as much.
Oh.
I hate that. Thanks, I hate it.
Just roughly 2 weeks after his first attack on November 2nd, 1974, Cook struck for the second time. His victim was another 20-year-old student who was at home in her bedsit, which is basically like British for dorm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
sit.
I know, isn't that so cute? It's a single room with a shared bathroom, and it's for typically students and young people renting a cheap first apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't on campus. It was like kind of like a sort of like a dorm apartment.
I feel like there aren't that many like dorms.
Mm-hmm.
In the UK, but there's just like a lot of like student housing because it's just a university town.
Sure.
Gotcha.
So police immediately tied this attack to the one just a fortnight earlier and warned young women in the Cambridge area to keep their doors and windows locked at night.
Mm-hmm.
As the attacks continued, reports of what the assailant was wearing started to become increasingly more bizarre. And here you can hear how I was focused on costumes.
Oh, God. Okay. We're following.
On November 11th, 1974, a young Australian woman who was living in Cambridge went to the Cambridge police to report that a man wearing only a long wig and a blanket wrapped around his naked body had attempted to force his way into her home, but she had fought him off.
The fuck?
Fuck that guy.
Weird costume, bro.
Uh-huh. From this point forward, Cook would be described by many of his victims as wearing a variety of disguises, most often wigs and false beards.
Clever.
It is also believed that he would wear women's wigs and clothing in order to enter areas like women's dormitory buildings. And then, like, unnoticed, like just slip in amongst the other ladies and then change or like strip off the disguises once he was like alone in the building and then commit the attack.
God.
Just 2 nights after this failed break-in at the Australian woman's home, Cook perpetrated his most vicious attack so far. He broke into a soundproof music studio at the Homerton College, which is like one of the sub schools, where an 18-year-old student was working alone, which, like, the fact that it's soundproof is so
already
scary.
Yeah.
Subdued her with ether and dragged her outside to a shed on the outskirts of campus where he beat and raped her.
Ugh.
So now he's like taking them from one location to a second location.
Yeah.
Early in the morning of December 8th, 1974. So this is all like very quick.
I was going to say, it's like
it
rapid
really is.
succession.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Like, it just goes so fast after his alleged first
Right.
victim
Yeah.
that doesn't add up to me.
Right. Cook committed another very similar attack. This time he entered a block of flats that was home to many students, broke into the home of a young woman and woke her from sleep by holding a knife to her throat. He then dragged her out of her flat into a garden outside the building and raped her there. Afterwards, Cook warned her not to go to the police or he threatened he would return and, I'm assuming, kill her. But thankfully, she didn't obey this instruction and she immediately reported her ordeal to the police. And this was really key because they got a lot of important information from this victim, both like corroborating information and new information. So investigators had been very short on leads thus far, but now they had 2 new details. For one, this woman reported that while he was raping her, the attacker referred to her boyfriend by name.
Okay,
Which
don't like that.
Indicated that these attacks were not random or
Right.
opportunistic.
They know somebody.
He was casing and like researching his victims. He was stalking them beforehand and learning about them.
Good God.
Secondly, she reported that when the rapist fled, she believed she heard the sound of a bicycle riding away. So now they think they know his
transportation
getaway means. She also corroborated some things that previous victims had said, including that the rapist was fairly short and that when he talked, his accent sounded like that of someone who had grown up in the Cambridge area. That's one thing I'll give the UK. You really could pinpoint where somebody was from.
I mean, I think that you could...
one thing.
I think you can argue that here, at least regionally, you can do the same.
But the UK is a way smaller than
I know.
With
I
way
know.
more
United
accents,
States.
I feel like.
I get it.
And the accents are like more... Like, our accents like come and go, kind of.
Yeah.
You know? A little bit.
I mean, ours, the three of us, is a small sample set.
Yeah.
I think they're a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more ingrained over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just like older towns and like your whole family and all your ancestors live in the same fucking house.
For
and, like,
sure.
Yeah. And in the 70s, I
those
feel like people
sweeping
didn't move around
generalizations
that
about
much.
the UK are gonna be.
We're
gonna go over
sticking
well.
with it.
You all live in the same house, and your ancestors have lived there forever, and none of you ever leave. And your accents.
You heat your homes with mud from bogs and
peat.
Do you even have internet there? How are you listening to this podcast?
We love the UK. Address emails to Derek. If you have internet. And
That's Derek. For some of you. Derek.
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 that's South African.
That's South African.
Yeah. / like New Zealand. I don't really know where you're from.
Yeah.
With that one.
Okay, so by this point, more than 100 plainclothes officers were patrolling the Cambridge streets at night looking for anyone acting suspiciously. So they are taking this seriously
yeah.
and they're doing what they can, but like they have very little to go on. But because the rapist was targeting women in their late teens and early 20s, it was extremely difficult for police to know where to focus their patrols because it's a massive university town
Yeah,
with like
so that's
thousands
everyone.
of young female students.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a full third of that town falls into that category.
Right. And it was impossible to know which of them might have been the rapist's next intended victim. And also, like, you know, it's a college town, so people are like out drinking, partying with friends, and like it's tough. So also, the city at this point is in a panic. Like word has spread. He has committed 4 like very horrific known attacks at this point.
So quickly.
Yeah. Police assembled a 60-person task force, which included psychologists, to create a profile of the rapist, who had become known in the press as simply the Cambridge rapist. Investigators had also gotten some forensic evidence from victims in the form of semen swabbed from the victims, which revealed that his blood group was O secretor. Again, it's the 70s. That's kind of the best they can do.
That also reveals a lot, though.
It does reveal a lot. And it also revealed that he is sterile. So there's ejaculate, but there's not live squiggles.
Hence the secretor.
Yeah.
Right. Police then asked all men living in Cambridge and nearby Newmarket to come forward and give saliva samples in order to eliminate themselves as suspects. And over 1,600 did, and this was entirely voluntary.
That's good.
So that's good. I don't think that helped any, but whatever. They also posted a reward of £1,000 for any information leading to the rapist, and Cambridge was plastered with posters asking for the public's help. So they really did what they could do. On December 15th, only a week after his previous attack, Cook returned to the same apartment building that was home to the Australian woman who had fought him off.
Dang.
Because he clearly was like, I've put in the time stalking this victim.
I'm finishing this job.
I'm gonna get her. Isn't that so fucking horrible?
That's fucked up.
This time he wore a wig and a false beard. He broke into the ground floor flat and stabbed a different 20-year-old woman
Oh, for fuck's sake.
who was now living there because there was a new tenant because the Australian woman had moved out because
Right, she's like, I got
don't feel
assaulted
safe here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then a
Oh,
new
my
woman
God.
moved in and then she was a victim.
Jesus Christ.
Isn't that horrible?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's fucking awful.
I mean, it would have been horrible if it had been the same. It was just horrible.
Mhm.
Everything
Yeah.
about it. So he stabbed this woman in the face, hands, and arms before raping her.
Ugh.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Ugh.
After this brutal attack, no others were reported for almost 4 months. So it could be that he figured out that, like,
Everyone's looking for him.
everyone's looking for him, or the fact that he was trying to go for this Australian woman and thought he had,
And
then it was
now
a
she's
different
gone.
victim.
Yeah.
And
That
it
he was a little creeped out.
and
like
it
a little.
threw him for a loop. We don't know. During these months, the rapist was never far from people's minds, though, and graffiti began to appear on walls throughout Cambridge that read, quote, "The rapist is back."
Ew.
Probably unlikely that he did that graffiti. It was probably some other fucking Yahoo for attention
Right.
and shock value, but whatever.
Some punk.
Some punk.
Was that your punk connection?
No, there's another
good.
punk connection, but it is still tenuous.
Tenuous.
Tenuous. Okay, so the next attack occurred on the night of April 13th, and this one included his most bizarre disguise or costume yet. Cook broke into the home of a 23-year-old receptionist. She had roommates. She actually had 3 roommates, but they had all gone out of town for the weekend, which is something that he probably knew from intensely stalking her beforehand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a lot of information.
So he reportedly said to the woman, quote, "Do you know who I am? I'm the Cambridge rapist."
Oh, give her a chance to answer before you just fucking tell her, you asshole.
Fucking.
It's fucking all showmanship and drama just gone in that instant.
I'll give you 3 guesses.
Ugh.
He raped this victim and left her bound and gagged, and it would take her 6 hours before she finally struggled free and was able to call for help.
Good God.
When she was able to go to the police, she reported that her attacker had been dressed head to toe in black leather, including a black leather hood that covered his face. And this was probably purchased from a fetish shop. And I tried to find out if the term for that kind of leather hooded fetish mask
Where it's
is
just like
appropriate
a,
to say.
just like a hole for your mouth.
mouth and
basically.
eye slits, basically.
I think everyone can picture
We can
it.
picture it.
You can picture it. So anyway, there's a term for it, but I don't know if the term is okay, and I don't feel comfortable saying it.
Oh, wait. Something that I saw in my research that I didn't include in my notes is that with the hardcore punk scene, there's actually kind of a lot of fashion overlap with BDSM.
Yeah.
I could see that, like
It's like-
tight leather and
The tight
sharp
leather, the
objects.
fishnets. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's kind of there punk connection, maybe.
Another
Well,
punk connection. We'll
Oh,
take it.
It's starting to tighten. It was a little loose, starting to tighten now.
right.
Remember the Titans.
So reports of this costume. Oh, sorry. This is the craziest part. There's a photo on the drive. The mask had 2 slits for eyes, and the word rapist
Wait, so he like
emblazoned
made
across
this?
the forehead.
So he wrote that himself on
Yeah.
it? What
Yeah,
a-
he bought this mask, and then he wrote that, and I think he gave himself little angry eyebrows.
he did.
In
he
white
totally
paint.
did.
and then the mouth is like a zipper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. So this is definitely a BDSM fetish.
That he took and changed.
Yeah.
And gave himself angry eyes.
Yeah. And there's a photo of 2 police officers holding this
And it's
fucking hood
the
as
most
evidence.
awkward photo
It
ever.
is really tragic.
It's my favorite. Okay, so also backing up, Kenyon had her case basically done with her photos just floating free on the drive because she didn't know which which episode this would fit into.
And we were like,
we were just innocently scrolling, and this
then
black
saw this
hood said,
hood.
rapist.
It's really horrifying.
yeah.
It's really jarring. We were like, what the absolute fuck is this?
Yeah.
Right.
So reports of this costume would lead to Cook receiving an additional moniker in the press, the Hooded Rapist.
Well, we're definitely not taking the word rapist out of his moniker. That's
No.
for sure.
So here is the punk connection. It would also inspire a T-shirt by iconic punk designers Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood that they would sell in their shop on Kings Road, which went by several names over the years, but at this point it was called the Seditionaries, or it was called Seditionaries. I think it used to be called Sex, or later was called Sex.
It was first called Sex, and that is what. So Malcolm McLaren like assembled the band of Sex Pistols. So that was hence their name, Sex Pistols, and a lot of, I'm sure, it inspired a lot of their fashion choices. So yeah, that was what I was referring to, the Sex and the Sex Pistols earlier.
Right.
Interesting.
So they designed a T-shirt around this rapist's hood.
well, like you said, intentionally
Shock value.
shocking and offensive.
Very
So
punk.
Yeah, it featured an image of the black hood and the phrase "the Cambridge Rapist."
Is there a picture of that shirt on the drive?
I think so. I thought I put one on there, but now I'm not seeing it.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So you see, yeah. Who is that wearing it? Is that McLaren?
I
have
think
no
that's
idea.
McLaren. Well, actually, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's very punk. Whatever. Although the T-shirt inspired outrage for its insensitivity, it has lived on as a definitive example of punk fashion. Several have been sold at auction for hundreds of pounds, and one was purchased by the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute in 2006, and another is in the permanent collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, our fucking patriarchy sweatshirt is in the permanent collection of the Minnesota Historical Society.
Isn't it? It's
true.
the Stay the Fuck Home sweatshirt.
Oh, that's
Sure
what I
is.
meant. You're right. The Stay the Fuck Home.
Also, hi, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, that is Malcolm McLaren. I just Googled him. That's what he looks like.
Yeah. I feel like using swear words for shock value doesn't actually hurt anyone. So anyway. After debuting his leather costume, Cook would go on to carry out two more vicious attacks. The first was on May 6th, 1975, and this was the first time that he attacked someone in daylight. So he's definitely taking
It's
more
escalating
risks.
big time. Yeah.
Wielding a knife, he broke into a house in the section of Cambridge called Pye Terrace, Pye, unfortunately. Well, now I won't try.
Boo.
And brutally attacked a young woman living there, leaving her bound and stabbed in the stomach before raping her. So now the stabbing is
Becoming a thing.
is becoming part of his MO.
Ugh.
Chillingly, as this attack was being carried out, the woman's flatmate was at the police station to report that they believed someone had broken into their home the night before.
No.
So he
Probably
had,
him.
of course it was him, yeah. And then he watched the flatmate leave
Oh
to
my
fucking
God.
report, and that's when
Ew.
he entered and committed the attack.
Ish.
It's so fucked up.
Yes. Ugh.
So this break-in would not have been the first time that Cook visited a home without carrying out a rape, because like I said, he would like burglarize a lot of homes. And I'm guessing that he was fantasizing and putting together his plans throughout all of that. There had also been reports of women discovering the phrase, quote, "sleep tight," signed the rapist, written on their windows.
Oh my
Yeah.
fucking God.
Which could have been him or could have been somebody else. It sounds like him.
It really sounds like him.
Cook was finally apprehended a month later as he fled from the Owlstone Croft Nurses Hostel. He had broken in and stabbed a young woman, but was interrupted mid-attack when her screams awoke other people in the hostel, and he was attempting to flee by bicycle.
Bicycle.
When police apprehended him, he was wearing a long blonde wig and was carrying women's clothing and lipstick.
So it's him.
Yeah.
This reminds me a little bit of Robert Durst dressing like a
1,000%.
mute woman.
He is like this weird amalgam of all these different
But
MOs.
before all of them.
Yeah. It's like, how
but
much?
like definitely something to study because clearly there are these patterns.
Yeah. And you wonder, is there inspiration or is there a psychological connection as to why these practices or these MOs are happening?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense to dress as a disguise like the opposite gender.
For sure.
Right. Yeah.
Opposite.
But it's
I
just
say that
some
loosely.
stuff is.
It makes sense to escape on a bicycle because you can dump it easily. It's silent. There's nothing immediately identifying about it.
Did the Golden State Killer use a bicycle?
Yes.
Yeah. And did
because he always
Ramirez too?
lived in the neighborhoods or nearby
Yeah.
where he committed those crimes.
Yeah.
All these things make sense. If you were going to commit a crime, they're actually fairly smart ways to do it. But
Right. But it's just really
It's
fucked
It's
up.
Crazy.
spooky. I don't like it.
yeah.
So after police arrested him and learned his identity, they searched his home where they found additional women's clothing and makeup, as well as a supply of ether and 87 copies of keys to various apartment buildings and women's hostels around the city.
Oh.
So he probably was sneaking in, burglarizing, making
Stealing the
copies of
keys.
keys. Yeah, exactly. And it's a university town. I fucking lost my keys all the goddamn time. You lose your keys, you get new keys, whatever. You don't
They
really.
usually don't change the locks after every time somebody moves in. And if you're in college, you don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's so creepy. Ugh.
And it turned out that Cook had actually been questioned by police early on in the hunt for the Cambridge rapist because he had a criminal record and was of a similar height to what the victims had described. However, he had managed to provide convincing alibis for the nights in question and had refused to provide his saliva, claiming that it was a violation of his civil liberties.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, the fact that he wouldn't give his saliva, they didn't flag that for further study. But also his criminal record did not include sexual assault in his record. It was just the burglary and bad behavior as a kid. But still, I don't know. Cook's initial court appearances after being arrested attracted massive crowds of mostly women who yelled obscenities at him as he was escorted into the courthouse with a blanket over his head. Fuck him.
Bye.
In October of 1975, Cook pleaded guilty to 6 counts of rape and 2 counts of assault and was given 2 life sentences. I feel like that's not even enough to cover what he did because he terrorized an entire city.
I mean, he was given 2 life sentences. Hopefully they keep him in jail this time.
Yeah. So the judge in the case, Justice Melford Stevenson, stated, quote, "In your case, I am recommending that life in prison means exactly that."
Yeah.
Cook was back in the news in 1995 when there was talk of him possibly being released on parole or being moved into an open prison where they can
fuck is an open prison?
And they're common. It's you have to report back at night, basically, but during the day you can go to a job or
it's
do
work
whatever you
release.
want. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, he doesn't get that.
No, this guy cannot fucking handle that. But after public backlash, it was announced that he would remain behind bars. In January of 2004, Cook was found dead in his cell. He had passed away from natural causes at the age of 75. Bye-bye.
Good. Fucking peace, bro.
So there's a photo of him on the drive.
Ugh.
He's got very large features.
Ugh.
Ooh.
Oh, he's not.
He's got
Ugh.
a
He looks
large...
like Andre the Giant.
Yeah,
Ugh.
his features are way too big for the size of his head.
Yeah.
He's got a big brow, big eyebrows, big eyes, big nose,
also,
big mouth, big chin,
those
big
bangs
ears,
are not doing
small
him any
face.
favors.
No, he must have cut his own hair too. That's maybe that was why he wore the wigs. He was
He does
self-conscious.
not have a small face.
I don't know. There's something really off in his facial proportions.
He looks like a giant. Also, his ears are really high on his head.
He's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yep. So that is my case. Aren't you glad it wasn't a live show?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot funny about that.
Nope. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Fuck this guy.
So if you see that T-shirt, don't buy it.
Yeah.
Don't wear it.
If you
Or
eliminate
do
the
buy
market,
it because it's worth a shitload of money.
Yeah.
if you eliminate the market for it, it ceases to exist in a capitalist society.
Like ivory. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm sorry, but
Are you?
I'm sorry.
I mean, he's fascinating and horrific.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that they caught him, and I'm glad he died in prison.
Yeah.
Me too. Shall we dive into my case?
I hope it lightens the mood.
Yeah.
I mean,
Distract us.
less rape.
Okay.
I'll take it.
I'll take
I mean,
it.
the bar is very low there. I mean, it was a lot of rape.
Low.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's great. So today I'm going to be talking about La Mirada punks who earned themselves the reputation of one of the deadliest punk rock gangs in history.
Don't like that.
They're not supposed to be deadly.
Well, they first emerged on the scene in 1977 outside of Los Angeles, California. There's like a suburb of LA called La Mirada.
Okay.
They were growing in numbers and hitting their peak in the 80s, obviously. LMP was bloodthirsty and would show up to shows with huge crowds to dominate any other punk gangs that might be in attendance, of which there were like a lot of punk gangs.
So it was just a gang. It wasn't a band.
No.
Okay.
No. They pulled shit like stabbing random innocent and unaffiliated concert attendees.
That's great.
And even once trapped the lead singer of a band that they went to see in a trash can for several hours just to fuck with him and like humiliate him.
Oh my God. They bought tickets to see that band and then
Yep.
they did that to the lead singer?
Correct.
I don't think they were there for the music.
They weren't.
God damn it.
So, like, bodies in various states of maim would be found, like, laid out in the pit and in the streets around
States
venues
of
after they
maim.
rolled through a show. Like, they were fucking bonkers.
Oh my God.
I think I'm starting to understand why my mom was such a nut about us going to concerts when we were like 14.
La
And I thought
Mirada
she was
punks,
like insane, but like you hear this shit and like
they were
shit
not
can
going to be
happen.
at the Newfound Glory concert at The Quest in downtown
You-
Minneapolis.
can't guarantee that.
You're right. I can't. But the
Can
risk
now
is low.
she was there and it was in the past.
That's
It didn't
true.
happen.
It certainly didn't happen. Let me take a sip because wow.
Well,
in an
especially
interview,
if like, oh, sorry.
go
I was going to
ahead.
say, Britton, I thought you were sipping. In response to Kenyon's mom's neuroticism.
Mania.
Mania. Yeah,
Gentle mania.
like we were saying earlier, our punk scene was so commercialized and like fucking milk toast compared to what your
like,
mom
she
grew
was
up with.
Right.
Young
right.
in the 70s, and so she was probably hearing about this shit.
Yeah.
It's starting to make more sense why
Yeah.
she was so overprotective.
You're
Right.
becoming your mother.
Shit.
You are.
We'll help rein
becoming
you
your
in.
mother. You
That's-
did tell me to shoot you in the face if you ever became like your mom. So I'm just saying.
I'm buying a gun so we can make this happen.
Don't you dare. Okay.
I won't shoot you, but
Just in case.
yet.
Don't
We'll see.
buy a gun is what I meant.
I mean, I can do whatever I want. I'm a red-blooded American. In an interview with biographers chronicling the violence of the LA punk scene, Vice asked, quote, La Mirada punks were a diverse crew, but what bound them together? Heath Mattioli responds, I'll answer that. Hate. They hated themselves, so they wanted you to feel a bit of that. They didn't know that's what they were doing, but the psychological profile behind it was what it was really about. Co-author David Spacone chimed in, the hate was fun. Destroying things was fun. You had the hippie movement, kids getting together and trying to battle society, but it was much more fun to just battle each other. There's a lot of introspection and articulation among dysfunctional youth. It's just all reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. And it's way easier to like fuck shit up than it is to try to like build a more utopic society.
Yeah, to give peace a chance.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to just beat the shit out of each other for sure. So white supremacist and neo-Nazi anti-Semitic punk gangs were on the rise in nearby Orange County, where areas like Fullerton, Costa Mesa, and Huntington Beach were controlled by alt-right punk gangs that were bleeding into LA territory, despite the efforts of the LA punk gangs to, quote, keep Nazis out of their scene. So
Make your own goddamn music. Oh, right. You can't because you're
You can't.
fascist.
Right.
You have
Pathetic.
Wagner, and that's it.
That's all you've got. This is from LA Mag.
Deep cut.
Quote, John Doe, bassist and a founding member of the band X, and obviously that's like his stage name, witnessed the rise of fascist attitudes in the hardcore scene firsthand and saw it as a bastardization of what attracted him to punk in the first place. The entire essence of being a punk, as he puts it, quote, never letting someone tell you what to do. But somehow factions of the hardcore scene managed to flip that notion on its head to the point where it became, Doe says, if you don't look and act like us, get lost, or like basically get your ass kicked.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like the exact
Opposite.
inverse.
I know.
But everything is like a mobilist strip, however you say that.
Mobius strip.
Mobius strip, where like the far end of something twists and becomes the far end of the opposite.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
But OC punk enthusiasts tend to disagree. So Orange County punks. Quote, Dan O'Mahony, a Huntington Beach-born activist and singer for the mid-'80s hardcore band No for an Answer, remembers things differently. I think it's a whitewash of the past to say that you saw more of the nationalistic shit in the OC, O'Mahony says. LA had its problems. The first place I remember encountering white power skinheads was at a hardcore show at the Olympic Auditorium in downtown. I've been going to hardcore shows for 30 years and had my ass kicked once, and it was in LA. However, he does agree that the situation was worse in Orange County because, quote, there was way more tolerance and far less pushback. It's just like, it's a super white area.
It's not as
I've
like
seen the OC.
extremist kind of.
Yeah, so he's
People
saying
tend to
like,
be a little more.
he's saying, I don't necessarily think that we had like more neo-Nazi punks in the OC.
They just were less afraid of getting.
But they could be more out in the open because it's such a white area that like they're not getting any pushback.
It's
for
basically a suburb too.
Exactly,
And like
exactly.
LA, you have like downtown intensity.
it's just a much more diverse area, and you're probably going to get fucking punched for having a swastika on your shirt.
That makes
in a
absolute
different area
sense,
or a more
yeah.
diverse area.
Yeah. It says there was way more tolerance and far less pushback for racist behavior. Orange County, especially back then, was one of the most conservative and homogenous counties in the country. O'Mahony says, quote, the Klan openly rallied in the 70s in the OC. And this was the movement started in like 77 for punk. So like that was not
very
in the
far.
past.
75.
That was right. But like that was very recent that the Klan was openly rallying in the OC. And he goes on to say, and Tom Metzger had an arm of the white Aryan resistance or war out there. Like out in the OC.
I did not know about that, but okay.
Yeah.
Who's
Fuck.
Tom Metz?
A white
Sounds like a
supremacist,
Klan
fucking
person.
neo-Nazi.
Oh, yeah. I'm not gonna
Context
Google him.
clues.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna Google him.
Don't
Fuck it.
Google him. Our search histories are already bad enough.
Oh, mine's totally fucked. I'll Google him.
Okay. So a leader of the LMP gang, affectionately known as Frank the Shank, did time for attempted murder and opened up about his experience in the bloody punk gang in the book Discos Out, Murders In, written by Mattioli and Spicone. Quote, as a kid growing up in the Los Angeles suburb of La Mirada, I'm burping because this is sparkling wine. Frank was routinely beaten by his alcoholic father, once even landing in the hospital where nobody asked any questions. Dad worked at a truck yard in Vernon where the boss was noted LA mobster Sam Sciortino. Nailed it.
Scortino?
Martin Scortino.
Yeah.
In 1979, Frank caught a hot brain load of Black Flag, the Sex Pistols, and the Germs. This is a quote. I wish I had come up with that.
Brain load. I love that.
And eventually connected his older half-cousins,
No.
conned his older half-cousins into taking him to his first show. the band X at the Whiskey A Go-Go at age 12. So he was part of like founding this gang, and it's like he started or like got really into it at a super fucking young age and ended up like a leader in this gang.
Yeah.
Also, circling back to Tom Metzger, he was the Grand Wizard in the 70s.
Oh.
Which, like, I'm sorry, but they can't have Grand Wizard.
No.
Yeah. That's
It's
too
too
cool of a
cool.
term
It's too
for
epic.
the worst organization ever.
You can't have it, and we're not going to let you have it because it's epic, and you can't fucking have it. So,
Oh, he's dead. Great.
Yay!
it's nice to get good
One
news.
good thing to happen in 2020. This dude died
Oh, that's fucking great.
on election day. No,
Really?
On November
lucky.
4th.
Oh, I love
Or
that.
the day after.
I think it was the 6th this year, whatever it changes.
Either way, he's dead.
He's gone.
So, when Frank the Shank's older neighbor, who went by Santino, founded LMP, so Frank wasn't a founder, but it was founded like in his neighborhood by like his neighbor.
LMP sounds like a bank, but
Yes. Prudential.
yeah.
Las Mirada.
LMP
Prudential.
Financial. Yeah.
Frank was ready to join. Within a matter of months, he witnessed members of the gang stab a man to death at a show in Hollywood. In the book, many names and small details have been changed because the perpetrators of these murders, so in that book, Disco's Dead, Murderers In, many of the names of the people who did this violent shit have remained like left out or changed because there isn't a statute of limitations on like the types of violent crimes that they committed.
Yeah.
So Frank was like, I did some time, but I'm not going to fucking tell you like actual
did
people's
what?
names because
you can still get arrested for
they
it.
can still get arrested. Like there's like I saw murder and committed and like at least attempted to commit murder.
Yeah, his
Like,
book would be testimony.
exactly.
Yeah.
So even Frank himself is unaware of the fate of many of his victims that he'd beaten or stabbed in the mosh pits. He was
Jesus.
only 18 when he was arrested for attempted murder, and this was all it took for him to walk away from the punk gang scene. The day he left jail, he left the scene forever, went on to raise 2 boys, and work for a private Christian university in Southern California.
That is quite the 180.
While many members of the gang have not been convicted of the violent crimes committed, a couple certainly did in June of 2007.
I wish
So-
he had named names.
I know. I
Fucking
kinda do
name
too, but-
names. They killed people. They hurt people.
I know. But, you know, I also like sort of get it. You're going to do this big like book using your name.
I mean, it
and
would
you
put him
still
in
live
danger.
in
It
a
would be
fuck
very
ton of
dangerous
danger.
for him
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
I probably, if I were in the unfortunate position of being in his, I probably wouldn't have either.
Yeah. So this next chunk of my case is like almost it's a massive quote from the court document on this case because it was like when I read it, I was like, what the fuck? So I just copied it in and I'm just going to go over it because it wasn't even, it makes no sense for me to try to change a court document. This is from the court document.
Okay.
So this says, Stephanie Walton knew victim Brett Engerman for about 2 years before he was killed. She would usually see Engerman, sorry, not Engerman. R's and M's look the same to me. At the home of the Robinsons, so like mutual friends. One day, the two of them decided to get high and went for a walk by a liquor store. Tyson Brose pulled up and they got in Brose's vehicle. 2 other males were in the vehicle already. They drove up toward a house where Walton knew that she could get some methamphetamine. Walton got out of the vehicle at a 7-Eleven. She was around the corner when Engerman, the victim, ran up behind her and said he just took $20 from the men in the vehicle. Walton went her own way and Engerman went back to the Robinsons' house. After Engerman took the $20, a group of 6 men came to the Robinsons' house looking for Engerman.
They spotted the house. They like followed them, or they knew that where he was going.
I
Or
think
did
that
she
this,
rat on him?
I think that this. Well, no, she walked off. The girl that he was
okay.
with. He took the $20. I think this was like an area where they knew to
Where
go
he-
to like go do meth. She wanted to get meth, And they were going to go to this house and like hang out and do drugs. So whether they followed them there or not, it wasn't far away. And I think it was like a known
Pretty
area.
obvious where to go. Okay.
Exactly. So Rebecca Robinson, one of the people who lived there, said, I guess he took some money of theirs because, he was supposed to buy them drugs or something like that. Robinson did not let Engelman go inside. Robinson offered to pay back the $20 Engelman took, but Bros refused, saying it was the principle of the matter.
Tyson Bros is a tough name.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
I wouldn't fuck with Bros. Brosz.
Yeah.
Bold.
Nose before Bros. Engelman
It's a
came
nose from me,
outside.
Bros.
It's a nose Bros zones. Engelman came outside, and the men were posturing and gathered in a U shape around Engelman. Robinson's son came outside and said the group disrespected his mother because she was like, you can't come in here. And they were like, fuck that. We're coming onto your property and we're going to fuck this guy up. So her son came out and was like, you guys fuck off. Said that the group disrespected his mother when they didn't leave after she asked them to leave. Yeah. Then Engelman and Robinson's son went back inside. She testified, then just so fast, I can't even comprehend how he did it. I heard a crackling sound around the side of the house. And my son was lying over the fence, cocking a shotgun, like trying to point a gun at them. At that point, the guys started running up the driveway, and Robinson grabbed onto the end of the gun because she didn't want her son to shoot anyone. So she intervened, got the gun away from him. Yeah. Then the group of men ran off because they're like, oh, fuck, this guy's got a gun and he's going to shoot us. So on May 9th, 1998, the day of the homicide, Sarah Barnard lived on Rye Street in La Habra. That's not really relevant, but it was in the document. Engelman came to visit her at her house at about 3 p.m. Defendant Jeremichael Cooley and several other persons, including Joseph Richard Duran and Bros, arrived. Duran.
Some of these names.
They're all really outrageous.
It's a lot.
Jeremichael.
That's a mouthful.
Duran. I can't. All of
Jeremichael was a bullfrog. Arrived at the house in a Suburban. Barnard said she became familiar with the group known as La Mirada Punks because her sister had dated Duran. Barnard told Bros she didn't want Duran.
I don't know why that triggers you so much.
It's a pretty common last name.
It's
pretty common.
With Tyson Bros. Jeremichael was a bullfrog, and also Robinson's son. That we've said like 4 times. Robinson's son.
Court documents are not like a beautiful woven tale. They're just the facts.
It's like Amanda's reaction to Abernathy in that one special thing. She lost her mind.
That made more sense than how much you're losing it over Duran. Duran is common. Abernathy is not common. Keep up. Barnard told Bros she didn't want any problems, and Bros responded, you better go ask him for my $20 before I do. Barnard asked the victim if he, Engelman, if he had Bros' money, and he said he didn't have it. So remember, all of this is over fucking $20.
And how long after this first incident was this current incident?
2 or 3. Days
a couple
after
days
the
later.
$20 is stolen. Yeah.
It's not like 6 months later.
No, but like still fucking
let it go.
$20. Yeah. Barnard also told Duran that she didn't want any problems, and Duran told Barnard, well, there's going to be problems. Barnard saw Cooley hit Engelman, the victim, and then they end up on the grass. Cooley, Duran, and Bros were fighting with the victim. Barnard said her dad and her brother tried to break up the fight. As the 3 men hit Engelman, he was rolled up in a ball. Barnard said, my dad's girlfriend turned the water on and was like squirting everybody with the hose to break up the fight.
That's the maximum I would do as well.
That is so messy, but so great.
It can work.
Yeah.
I think it's smart. I probably wouldn't think to do it, but it's
I know,
smart.
but now I'm gonna
now your perpetrators are soaking wet
and like
you
sliding
need to
all
make
over the grass.
Report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fight broke up, and the victim went out Barnard's front gate and toward his car. So Engelman, like the hose worked. Engelman's running out the front and trying to get to his car. Barnard then saw Cooley and Duran running toward Walnut Street, like chasing Engelman. Dwight Barnard, a different Barnard, but they're related, said that after the fight was broken up, the guy was stabbed was walking to his car at that point. Engelman looked over his shoulder and then began to run. He ran around the corner from Rye onto Walnut. Duran ran after Engelman and also ran around the corner. Dwight Barnard said Cooley then ran around the corner too. So in the fight, they'd stabbed him like at least once, and he was like running off.
Stabbed Engelman.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Then an eyewitness to the confrontation, as it like moved into its next phase, a woman named Victoria Elmquist was driving.
All of these names are made up.
I know. Was driving south on Walnut Street with her niece at the time of the incident. She saw two guys chasing down another guy. So Duran, Cooley, chasing Engelman, and
Every time you say Engelman, I think of Entenmann's.
Yes, lozenges.
The desserts.
The desserts. That taste like lozenges. She saw the person being chased trip on the sidewalk. She added, once I had driven past them, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw that they had caught up with the person they were chasing and they were beating him up in the middle of the street. She said the victim was being kicked and punched by both men. She then turned her vehicle around, and as she got closer to the scene, she observed the victim was still being beaten. And then the next thing I see is a knife. She said it's 2 against 1. He's being hit and kicked numerous times, in various places on the body and the head. So he's just getting the shit beaten out of him, and then somebody pulled
And he's already been stabbed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just see someone trying to defend himself. She saw a thrusting motion, and then I see the victim clutch for his chest and just go down. The 2 assailants then fled and ran past her vehicle, and she yelled profanities at them. You go, girl.
It's very brave of her to turn her car
Very
around.
brave. I don't know that I would have been that brave.
I mean, I feel like maybe I would have pulled over and called the police.
It's also the 90s, though. So
Yeah,
she
there aren't
might
cell
not have had a
phones.
cell phone, probably
Yeah.
didn't have a cell phone.
No, I'm sure she didn't. It was like you
Yeah.
said, it's 1998.
Yeah.
So then she
wow.
got out of her car and went to the victim to make sure that he was okay. And she asked if he was okay, and he responded, "No, I've been stabbed." He continued to clutch his chest and rock back and forth. Then his eyes rolled back in his head, and he fell back and hit the cement. And she says, I mean, the street. She and a man on the other side of the street put the victim in the back of her pickup, and Elmquist drove him to the hospital where he died.
Jeez.
So she did everything she could to try and save his life, and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
She made a valiant effort to
She
save
really
her life.
did.
did.
And her
I mean-
niece is just like in the car, like,
Wow. That's
What?
a way to be an upstander, not a bystander.
Exactly.
But still, it's so scary.
So Cooley and Duran were both charged and convicted of first-degree murder. The gang, as far as I can tell, at least in some
LMP
capacity,
Prudential.
yes, still exists today, though over the years has deviated from its anti-racist roots and fallen under the, quote, protection of neo-Nazi prison gangs, because a lot of the gangs' members...
Anti-racist.
I don't know why it repeated that.
It's just the one.
It's just the one, which is why I only said one, and you don't have to read every misspelling in my notes.
Well, I thought we were talking about the racist gang.
No, the LMP was originally not a racist gang, or postured itself as being like against the folks from the OC. Who
And then
were
it
the
got
racists.
taken over.
And now
okay.
that so many of them have gone in and out of prison, they found themselves under the protection of like neo-Nazi prison gangs.
Because a
and
bunch
had
of
more,
white boys went to prison.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was more control over them and more
Yeah.
just connections. Not everybody in LMP was a neo-Nazi, but like it was just starting to go in that direction.
Okay.
So court documents I found dating July 2016 listed La Mirada Punks as, quote, a white racist criminal street gang. Recently in 2017, 13 people, the majority of whom were connected to LMP, were arrested for credit card skimming and narcotics trafficking. This is from justice.gov. The credit card skimming operation was allegedly operated by a man linked to a criminal street gang known as the La Mirada Punks and the Carmelas. Russell J. Ogden, along with his wife, are accused of leading the scheme that allegedly skimmed credit cards. So I think that means, like, obviously they steal the number, but, like, you know how you sometimes see those horror stories of, like, the caps put on gas station credit card runners or ATMs?
That's exactly what happened to me one time.
Where it's
Yeah.
like they use this little bit of technology and then they can just get your card information.
Like copies your credit card, basically.
Exactly. Meaning the victim's credit cards were surreptitiously run through an electric device that collected the card's information. Members of the scheme then encoded the stolen information on counterfeit credit cards and used the fraudulent cards to purchase big ticket items that were later sold for a profit. The investigation has determined that many of the credit cards in the case were skimmed at a restaurant in Huntington Beach.
As opposed to my case, they spent hundreds of dollars at a sunglass hut in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
To later sell those sunglasses.
Exactly.
It's exactly. Or they just needed a lot of sunglasses. I don't know.
It was a lot of sunglasses.
A lot. In total, the conspiracy compromised more than 500 credit cards and caused various financial institutions to suffer losses of more than $500,000.
Holy shit.
After the cards were used across Southern California at department stores such as Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's, sporting goods stores, and Toys R Us, according to the bank fraud indictment that I'm reading from. Those charged in the 27-count bank fraud indictment are, and this is how I'm ending my case because I went over so many names that I had to then give another list of names.
Okay.
Russell J. Ogden, also known as Big Dag, 43 of La Mirada. Big Dagden of La Mirada, who was taken into custody late this afternoon. It's expected to be arraigned tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. Rudy Leo Aguilar, also known as Fats and Dreamer, 32 of Norwalk. He was previously convicted of voluntary manslaughter in a gang-related incident and was sentenced to 13 years in state prison. So he's done, it's not his first rodeo.
Fats and Dreamer.
Yeah, depends on which. If my first stint, I went by Fats.
Now I'm going by Dreamer. Blaine Andrews Porlas, 51 of La Habra, who is linked to the Nazi lowriders. Marco Anthony Alday III, 26 of Whittier. Milan Vukovic, also known as Bo, 37
This
of
is
Artesia.
Mad Libs.
I know, I
Yeah.
love it. Shelley Ann Ogden, who is Russell Ogden's wife, 41 of La Mirada.
Little Dogden.
Little Dogden. How much is that little Dogden in the window? Leo Norman Aguilar, 32 of Norwalk. Amir Adnan Youssef, 32 of La Mirada. Sean Philippe Vasquez, 49 of Esperia. And Lloyd Luis Lay, 43 of Huntington Beach, who was sentenced to 13 years in state prison in an attempted murder involving a firearm and is currently a fugitive in this case, or at least was at the time that I found this in 2017.
A lot of these people, though, sound either Hispanic or Latino or, Muslim. And it's like, how are you cavorting with Nazis?
Not everybody in that group is affiliated with neo-Nazi groups that are trying to control these gangs.
Right.
Yeah,
but it's still just messy.
Yeah, and not everybody on that list was one of the La Mirada gang either. Which is which
it was the bank fraud piece.
Right. Which at least since its foundation has been primarily white.
Okay.
The Nazi vibes with this group is kind of confusing because it goes back and forth.
It really does. It's really fucking confusing.
Okay.
I'll finish this out with this continues to say, many of these defendants are members of the La Mirada punks and the Norwalk-based Carmelas, criminal street gangs, and most of the defendants have felony records. It was disclosed in court this afternoon. Each defendant is charged with conspiracy to commit bank fraud, a charge that carries a statutory minimum sentence of 30 years in federal prison. Most of the defendants are also charged in other counts of credit card fraud and aggravated identity theft. And as you saw, several of them have records, and so that's not going to be helpful for them at sentencing. Rudy Leo Aguilar is also named in a separate indictment that charges him with distributing nearly 2 pounds of methamphetamine, which is a lot of fucking meth.
Jeez.
Two additional defendants are charged in another narcotics trafficking case involving methamphetamine, and they are Gustavo Uribe Meza, also known as Big Boy and Goose, 24 of Whittier, and Peter Ciapparini, also known as Uncle Pete, 72 of Southgate. The age disparities are so bizarre in this list of affiliated people.
Big Boy is 24.
And Uncle Pete is 72. Get out of the game, Uncle Pete. What are you doing?
Yeah, retire, Uncle Pete.
He wanted one last job.
One last job. You son of a bitch.
He was chasing that dragon.
You son of a bitch.
I'm in. Assembling a crew. The final defendant arrested in the takedown is charged in an indictment that accuses him of trafficking approximately 3.6 kilos of methamphetamine and federal firearms violations. And he is Norman Aguilar Jr., also known as Flea, who is Leo Aguilar's brother. And he's 35 years old of Norwalk. And that is my list of names / my case.
So basically, a bunch of people who wanted to beat people up at punk shows then finally were like, you know what? Fuck this. Let's just sell drugs and steal people's credit card information.
Yeah, it was really like an evolution.
Like a biker gang.
Let's become capitalist.
It was very much an evolution from being like this weird but massive punk-specific gang where they like attended these shows with huge numbers and like beat the shit out of people and really wreaked fucking havoc all around LA. And then I need to read this book because I'm so curious where like so much of that shift really started to happen. Or it's like, was it when folks were going to prison and then it's like their ideations are changing because obviously they're falling under the protection of some very fucked up people. It's probably like a combination of a whole lot of things. And I obviously didn't have time to read an entire book in the last like day, but I'm very curious about it.
It seems like such a dramatic shift, but like Kenyon said, like far left, eventually it's not a big leap to far right because they're both extremist ideologies.
I read an article recently about like the guy who founded the original publication that we now know as Vice.
Oh, he was like a Proud Boy.
Yeah, but he started off as like a super progressive left-wing person, and then the evolution was crazy, and then he like founded the Proud Boys and got super Trumpy, and like something shifted and like all of his fucking relationships fell apart, and he's just like a total fucking asshole now.
It's a contrarian.
It's wild. I think that article was in Vanity Fair. I remember reading it last summer. It was really fascinating, so I definitely recommend looking it up because it's definitely like a cautionary tale for everyone. You know, things can happen in your life that change how you like process the world, and it can open you up to some really fucking scary thoughts and ideologies. Anyway, punk is dead.
Punk is dead, and maybe that's a good thing. Okay.
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna go listen to The Clash because that's the last time it was okay.
I'm gonna listen to Green Day because I need a little bit of comfort after this episode.
And special thanks to the fan picker who picked costume crimes that led us to Kenyon's horrifying case that now led us to this episode, which was quite fascinating. And I had a really lovely time talking about all this with my best friends.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you next week.
Yes.
See you later.
Bye-bye.